Everyone. So in this video, it's going to be the last for Module 4. We're going to show you how to use Microsoft Excel so that you can do some of the calculations you might need for the exponential distribution as well as the normal distribution. So these are going to be done in Excel. So let's head over to that. Now, try and make this bigger again. So now if we're talking about the normal distribution, what are some of the things that we have been using for that? So we've got the mean, we've got the standard deviation, we've got n, and we've got basically what x low, and we've got x high. Again, it'd be nice if I could actually spell any of this stuff, but whatever. So, again, with the normal distribution, the way that it's set up, we have to look at take the high value, see how far out it goes, and then subtract off the low value. So we can come up here and say like n CDF, so that we know what the range of the values are. And then we can come out here and say P, oops, uh, high, and then P low. Now, anytime that we're doing these types of calculations, or should say a lot of times when we do these calculations, we're going to assume a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1, and that n equals 1. Why? Because uh, apparently that's a thing. For x low and x high, we could look at it as say negative 1.96 to 1.96, because we already know the normal distribution, because it's symmetric. Uh, the value or the area under the curve from negative 1.96 to positive 1.96 should come out to be 95%. So that's essentially what we should be getting, like right here. But we've got to do some of these calculations first. So P low, we can do equal to, and then you can see here, normal distribution. So the x value we want, the x value is going to be low. The mean is what we want there. Now, for the standard deviation, the thing that we have to keep in mind here uh, is that it's going to be n, or standard deviation divided by the square root of n. So this is going to be a little bit more involved than we wanted before. So how do we do that? I'm going to click here uh, on B2, hit the divide button, and then there is no square root, so I just have to type in SQRT, open the parentheses, click on 1, close parentheses, and that gives me the standard deviation or the standard error. And then cumulative, yes, that's what we want. So it'll be true. And based on what we were talking about last time, the area below negative 1.96 should be about 2.5%. This is saying that it's a 2.4998%. Close enough. So on the high end, and there are actually a couple different ways we can do this. Because I've got everything set up here, I could actually copy it and paste it down here. If I do that, and don't do this, at least not yet. But let's say I decided to do that and just got ahead of myself. Pop it down here, and we've got this num thing. So what's actually going on here? If I double click on here, we can see that all the numbers that I had originally are now like completely messed up, which is why, or which is what's going wrong with this. So what I really need to do is come back up here. When I look at everything that's up here, the X value, that is going to change, but B1, B2, and B3 need to stay right where they are. So in order to do that, I will hit the enter button and again try to make this a little bit larger so hopefully everyone can see it. Now what I can do here is I can type $sign and then $sign in front of the B and the 2, then $sign in the B and the 3, and hit enter. What those $signs are just going to do is basically anchor those values on there. So when I drop this down here, it's now actually using the correct values that we should be using. Um, so like B1 is going to be the mean for all of these. By putting the $B, $1, I'm locking it in that place. If I didn't do that, we'd have something like what's happening here with a B5. So here it's B5. When I look up here, it's B4. So if I lock it in place, it's always going to reference that same cell over and over and over again. If I don't lock it in place, then it's going to basically follow the same pattern that we had before. Sometimes those changes are fairly nice to deal with. Sometimes they're a bit grumpy, but whatever. So now that we've got that, I can now come down here and I want to know what is the range of values that I've got. So P high minus P low, can go ahead and hit enter. And as we talked about before, we already know that this should be 95%. This is saying that the total area under the curve is 95.0004%. Good enough. For those of you that might be concerned about the real value is 1.96, but I keep using 2's for a bunch of these. If I come up here and I change that to a 2, and then I change this to a 2, it's now so basically, according to this, the confidence intervals that I have you calculating aren't the 95% confidence intervals. They're the 95.45% confidence intervals. Whatever. It's good enough. So again, how did I get these actually, or get these to actually calculate? I will put the little apostrophes in front so that you can see what exactly I was typing in there. And I'll give you a moment to look at that. All right. So uh, with the normal distribution, I can now take what we've got here. I can start messing around with doing all the different calculations that we were trying to do in a bunch of the videos, especially when it comes to that normal distribution. So if I know that the mean is now 10, the standard deviation is 4. Oops, that didn't go as planned, but that's what the undo button's for, right? So just hit the undo button up here. I'm going to say the standard deviation is 4, and let's say n is 9 or something like that. So this is telling us that the probability of getting a value between -2 and +2, when the average is 10, the standard deviation is 4. And again, when we have n equals 9 here, we're looking at the average of 9 people. You can see that these probabilities are really, really small. But if I change that to I don't know, say 7 to 11 or something like that. Now it looks a little bit more reasonable, right? If I want to make this 7 to 13, we can see what those values do. Uh, so pretty much anything we want to do here. So again, we want to look at the 8% uh, average rate of return. 8% is the standard deviation. I've got my four stocks that I'm picking, and let's say I want to know what's the probability that I'm going to get 10 to 14% rate of return on that, which would be absolutely phenomenal. We can see here that it's telling me that that rate of return will occur about 24% of the time. If I want to look at what's the probability that we could actually lose uh, like pretty much all our money. This is telling me under these circumstances, there's a 2.2% chance, or 2.3% chance that we could actually lose money and lose value and stuff like that. So this is a lot easier to deal with than what we were doing before. Once we've got all this stuff set up, it's really easy to go through and play around with it. And again, if you don't have a TI-83 or TI-84 calculator, everything that we're doing here makes it so much easier to do. The other thing that we need to do is we need to figure out uh, the exponential distribution. So what we end up with is MTTF. And just as a reminder, that's the mean here. So MTTF. And then we've got an X value low and an X value high. Do, 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 do. And then we want to do uh, P low versus P high. Oops. And this will actually give us a range. Uh, so sometimes we want to know what is the probability that a part is going to fail between, say, 1,000 cycles and 2,000 cycles or something like that. So if I have a mean time to failure of, say, 6,000 cycles, and I want to know what's the probability it'll fail between 2,000 and 3,000 cycles, I can plug those numbers in. Now the formula that we have here is going to be 1 minus, and then we just have to type in exp to get the exponential. So we can't just use 1 minus e and then go on from it. We have to use the formulas and the functions that uh, are being used here. It even looks like there might be an exponential distribution here. Who knows? Can we actually do that? Is that actually a thing? I'm actually excited about this now. All right, so there we go. X value, lambda, that's going to be our mean time to failure. And then cumulative is going to be true. Now, again, we need to look at these and again with the B1, uh, force that to where it needs to be. Then if we come down here, that doesn't seem to be working right. So maybe we can't actually use that. So let's go back and use the formula that we were talking about before. So equal to 1 minus exponential negative x divided by mean time to failure close parentheses. That looks more realistic. And again, because we want to keep coming back and referencing whatever we have in V1, going to put those dollar signs around it. Going to drop this down here. And then we can say this is the exponential cumulative density function. And this is going to be the difference between these two values here. So this is saying that approximately 11% of the time, a part is going to fail between 2,000 and 3,000 cycles. So what exactly are 2,000 and 3,000 cycles? It's just a way of trying to talk about some of the different things we can look at. In the exponential distribution stuff we were talking about in the last video, we were talking about miles and before something would actually break, that sort of thing. So we could think of a cycle as a mile. If we talking about light bulbs, basically flipping them on and flipping them off, that would be, say, one cycle. If that was the case, then this is be saying that we expect a light bulb to be able to be turned on and off approximately 6,000, or on average 6,000 times. And 11% of those light bulbs would fail between 2,000 and 3,000 light uh, times when they actually turn it on. So it's a thing that happens. A lot of times too, we could be looking at how many parts are actually going to be made, or uh, how many people are going to be, uh, a lifetime of in years, lifetime in days, stuff like that. So all those could be considered different cycles. We could consider 6,000 the number of seconds that uh, something's going to last if we get potentially in a chemical reaction or nuclear reaction or something like that, and how much of it's going to be gone between 2,000 and 3,000 seconds, that type of thing. So a lot of different ways we can play around with this. And again, I'm going to uh, try to freeze the screen so that you can all see what it is that I actually typed in here. Make it a little bit bigger so hopefully everyone can actually see everything. And like I said, with the exponential distribution, it's good for looking at lifetimes of things. It's not the absolute best. The absolute best is a Weibull distribution, which takes everything that we've just done here and then ups the complexity just a little bit. For anything we need to do in this class, though, and anything that I'm going to expect out of you, doing it with this is going to be good enough. If you get into the working world and you need to use uh, the Weibull distribution, or however they pronounce it, uh, then you have an idea of what's actually going to be going on, and you can essentially modify these things as you see fit. So as far as getting Excel to calculate all these things for you, we actually have all the calculations and everything that we need here. And because I'm already done with everything, and we've done a couple different, uh, ran some different numbers just to make sure everything's working, I'm not going to go any longer than I have to. So, not going to torture you as long as I normally do. You're welcome. Talk to you all later.